Lords, I think every speaker in this debate has paid enormous credit to the comprehensive and important report from Sir Brian Langstaff. So much weight in there, in both a literal and a metaphorical sense. But I particularly want to focus on paying extreme credit and respect to the individuals, both the infected and the affected, who provided the heart of the testimony to Sir Brian's report. They were people who were talking about the most awful personal experiences, and they were crucial to Sir Brian's work, and I think it's really important that we focus on their contribution. Now, I want to thank the Noble Lady Baroness Twikos for securing this debate, for the very clear introduction and the tone which the government has adopted in this space, as indeed the previous government did. And this has been, I think, a very powerful debate. But I particularly want to pick up a word used by the Noble Lord Bitchard, complacency. And I think, in following on from the Noble Lord Dobbs, I think we have to ask the question about where the complacency has lain, where the responsibility for the complacency has lain. The Noble Lord Dobbs said, make public servants responsible, make officials, talked about the civil service. But I think we have to ask about where does the leadership come from. Ultimately, there is political responsibility. That's where responsibility is supposed to lie in our system. And I'm afraid I'm going to say something that may feel uncomfortable to many sides of your Lordship's House. The next time you feel tempted to use the phrase world leading in a self-congratulatory tone, please ask yourself the question, is this justified, and are we using this as an excuse not to be better? Because that is very often what it comes across. And if that is the message that's being delivered from the political leadership down to the people who are, after all, in your hands as a political leader when you're the minister, what is it going to be directing them to do? Please do ask these questions. And when people come to you and say everything's fine, but at the same time there are campaigners, there are people who are saying we've been mistreated, the state is not working here, it hasn't delivered for us. Please don't just take a reassurance from a civil service, from a Quango, from whoever, to say, no, it's fine. Please keep asking questions. Now, I think I'm not going to go through people in this debate are very, very aware, your Lordship's House is very aware, but I think Sir Brian Langstaff highlighted some absolutely wrong things that happened. The intentional destruction of documents, the decision by the government to use phrases such as no conclusive proof of a link between blood products and HIV, to give false comfort and to misrepresent risks. And I think if there's one sentence from Sir Brian's report that really needs to be highlighted, it's that sentence that says, this disaster was not an accident. So let's look at the fact that the World Health Organization advice from the 1950s warned of the risks as well as ways to minimize them, like heat treating blood and restricting those who could donate. Now, a great deal's already been said, so I won't go over the same ground about the duty of candour and the so-called Hillsborough Law Report. But I will stress that I'm confident your Lordship's House will absolutely be focusing on the detail of that bill and what we might be able to do to make it stronger, and I look forward to doing that. And I again pick up the words of the Noble Lord Bitchard about the need for civic involvement, public involvement, true democracy, in terms of making sure that Hillsborough law is as strong as it can possibly be. Now, I think both the Noble Ladies, Featherstone and Keeley, have talked about the delays to the compensation for the affected as opposed to the infected. I'm just going to make a couple of additional points rather than going over the same ground. I'm particularly drawing here on the briefing from the campaign group Factor 8, and I'm looking at the applications for interim payments of 100,000 estates for the eligible £100,000 payments for the eligible estates of those who've died, and a specific question to the Noble Lady the Minister: will the funding for legal help be available in advance to families that may be applying for that funding? Because for them to have to self-fund and then claim the money later is obviously for many going to be utterly impossible. Now, I think we've covered a huge amount of ground in what has really truly been a harrowing debate, so I'm really just going to make two final points, one of which is many references have been made, and I'll particularly pick up a point made by the Right Reverend Prelate, the Bishop of Sheffield, the Orgreave inquiry. Where is it? And I repeat that question to the Noble Lady the Minister. But I think when we're thinking about the compensation we're talking about today, we have to think about the Windrush scandal and the second scandal of how Windrush compensation has simply not worked out, and we have to think about that in this context. And I don't think anyone has yet mentioned, but I think the parallel has to be drawn with the issues raised in the so-called Cumberledge report, the First Do No Harm report, vaginal mesh, sodium valproate and Primados, which are significantly in terms of time after the events we're talking about in terms of the affected blood scandal, but the same things kept happening again and again and again, and we have to highlight that. And I also want to highlight, not in the medical field, but on the 21st of October, I'll be joining the Truth About Zane campaign, referring to the terrible death of the 7-year-old Zane Bangbola, who was killed by a flooding that released toxic chemicals from a historic landfill site. And there were total failures in government action after that. And I very much hope that we're going to hear positive news from the government of keeping up with Sir Keir Starmer's previous promise to hold an independent inquiry into Zane's death. There are so many issues here, and I circle back really to where I started. We have individual failures, we have structural failures, but we also have to ask the question, let's not just blame the way things are structured, let's ask the question of why do we not have a state that functions for its people? Because we don't. And that means we should be asking some very deep questions about the way this place, the other place, the whole of the British government is structured.